What did you find out after a first date that was a deal breaker? That he had restraining orders against him from not one, but 2 exes. Also asked if he could move in with me on the first date, faced with tears of joy. On the surface, he was a lawyer with an Ivy League degree. Then just one layer deep, he had 6 kids with 5 different women. One of his exes hated him so much, he took their kids to Germany to get away from him. And the kicker? His youngest was 6 months old and he was sleeping on his ex's couch. Prior to our first date, he said he didn't have any kids. While he was driving me home after our first date, he mentioned that he hated letting his baby mama use his car because she always messed with the radio stations and that it took forever to get his seat adjusted back to how he liked it. I was just out of high school and wasn't looking to date anyone with kids. With how disrespectful he was during our date, finding out that he had a kid was an automatic deal breaker for me. He then kept calling and texting me, and after I blocked his number, he kept creating new social media accounts to get a hold of me because he wanted to go for a second date and kept bringing up that he was making good money, so I'd be an idiot to say no to him. My date kept trying to braid my hair, lol. At first, it seemed weird, but not like a deal breaker, but then he kept asking. The first time he asked, we were walking through the park, and I was telling a story, but he interrupted me, asking, "Can I please braid your hair?" I laughed, politely said no, and continued talking, but he kept interrupting, asking to braid my hair. I asked why, but all he said was, "I just want to braid it," and kept reaching for my head. I swatted his hand away a few times, and when that didn't work, I told him I was ready to go home. It was so creepy. He told me that he couldn't wait to have kids with me, and that he had picked out our kids' names. When I told him that this was our first date and I wasn't sure about kids, and that this was a super creepy thing to say to me, he insisted it was my duty as a woman and that it would make me very happy. Yeah, there was no second date. He was a felon. Had a really unbelievable story about being locked out of his ex's house, and he broke in while just happening to be holding a rifle from turkey hunting. Terrifying. She said she used heroin, but unlike most people, she could do it safely. Her other guy showed up in the middle of our date. She said, "Can I talk with him for a minute?" I said sure, then walked out the door and never looked back. She was married. We met at a bar and left together. Went and had dinner, saw a movie, and she spent the night. The next morning she says, "I wonder if my husband figured out I didn't come home." Then she asked me for a ride to work and I got a ticket because she didn't wear her seatbelt. She had a date right after our date with her steady boyfriend. Not the next night, 5 minutes later. I had to drop her off at the next date. Like, why go out with me when you have a boyfriend? I didn't even try to kiss her, but she planted a big one on my lips to say goodbye. That my date would not cut his toenails, that he would grow them on purpose, because he would prefer using his toenails to scratch his legs. I don't have to bend down so often. I got to see them. Folks, I ran. He was hung up on his ex, to the point he wouldn't stop talking about her for the entire dinner. Oh, and he told me he was an alcoholic that still drinks and runs AA meetings. He got drunk and I used his phone to Uber him a ride home. He was a really bad magician. Brought cards and everything, couldn't land a trick, uneasy face. I felt bad and took him up on a second date, but that was it. I think she was in love with her best friend and didn't realize it. She told me she and her longtime best friend she called her wifey lived together in a single room with the friend's baby. She said that this friend always comes first and they're inseparable. They also have gotten kicked out like 3 times from house to house. She left the date early because whoever they were renting from was threatening to kick them out. We never really talked again, but I wanted to tell she shouldn't be dating because she's already in a relationship. He lost a pile of money in crypto and NFTs. But still tried to convince me to get my money into it. He didn't even make it to the first date before telling me all about the custody battle with his crazy ex-wife over their 2-year-old son. Oh, plus the bit where he asked if he could kiss me, twice, and then to get around me saying no, kissed his fingers and touched my forehead and said this is my kiss to you like a creep. Technically, this was after a second date, but I was so impressed that he'd treated me and the person who introduced us to sushi. I was 18 and he was 27, so I guess it just impressed me because most 18-year-olds can't just treat a group to sushi. But then he let slip that he'd paid for it all with his mom's credit card. He didn't have a job. Recovering addict. And his mom's credit cards were financing his whole life. So, it was a deal breaker. Date, 19M, said his ex's parents hated him. I asked why. Turns out his ex was 13F. Gee, why would her parents have a problem with them dating? Here it is, years later, and I still feel like I need to shower after typing that. He kept telling me what to do. It seemed innocent at first, but after the third or fourth time, nah, not doing this again. Found his Twitter, and besides his online personality being hating on women and loving soccer, I saw a tweet about me, regarding a comment I said about not liking a certain artist and how stupid he thought I was, ghosted him immediately. He had no money to get home and wanted to sleep at my place. Big nope, stranger. Threatening to cut my throat was a bit of a deal breaker. He asked me to call his girlfriend to tell her we would be together now. She couldn't stop talking about how much cocaine she did. I at worst have a drink once every few weeks. Not my scene. I've had some terrible ones, but my best friend's takes the cake. Her date said he was a writer and he's doing a book about women. He said the first chapter was called Don't Flatter Yourself. He proceeded to tell her how women think they are above everyone and that his book would help solve some of their annoying issues. Mine isn't nearly as good, but here is one of my top deal breaker dates. He came into the bar and instead of giving me a hug or handshake hello, first time meeting in person since we met from a dating app, he decided to lick my face. Lick my face. He then sat down and talked only about how he needed to get laid. I was mortified and left early. He told me his ex has like 7 multiple personalities, also told me their names and ages. I might have been okay with him, but he has an 8-year-old son with her, so she's going to be in his life for a while. I don't need the drama. He spilled beer on his menu and slurped it off with his mouth. Drove erratically and way too fast with me in the car, trying to show off. I refused to go on another date but stayed in contact. They totaled their car the next week. She told me she was a Christian life coach. Then asked me what my personality type was and proceeded to try to tell me about who I was and why.